Samantha Martin, welcome
Thank you.
to Business Insider. Director of External Relations and Strategy for the Hunter TAFE and incorporating Central Coast. Massive opportunity with the evolution and the continuing evolution of TAFE. It doesn't much make any difference, but I'm a fan of the space you guys are in and growing into. What are the biggest changes in the way you guys interact with businesses and how students can get involved with businesses right now?
Perhaps the most significant, Mark, has been the taking our products out of the classroom and delivering on-site at businesses, or recognising the prior learning of people that are working within that business so that they complete a part qualification or just skills within that qualification.
So what does that mean? So for me that's a really interesting area, because all of a sudden you don't have to sit through, you know, those 12 subjects, you know, prior learning. How does that get judged?
Well, we have a criteria by which we judge that prior learning, and there's demonstrated examples, there's on-site observations that we would make. It's a whole host of different things that we put together that would be able to validate your prior learning.
Okay.
So that then we recognise your experience and we recognise that prior learning, and as a result of that you complete X amount of the course because you've already done Y amount. So it's really customised to suit the individual, and it's designed also around the business's needs, because the business doesn't want to have an employee out of the business learning stuff that they already know. So it's much more customised, it's really individualised for the student, and for the business it's just a much better arrangement all around.
Okay. Other major changes, that's obviously on the work floor. The transition into further learning after TAFE. We talked briefly about, you know, the transition from TAFE into a degree course. Is that simpler these days, or it's not there's not as many barriers in place, I'm presuming?
Yeah, look, I think it is simpler. The pathways from TAFE to university and university to TAFE, they're simple, and for an individual, it's easy for them to take that pathway. Interestingly enough, there were 65,000 people last year that actually made a transition from university back to TAFE.
You picked up my sensitivity there. As soon as I said that, I thought, no. So what, 65,000, that's a migration, isn't it?
Yeah,
so
it really is.
Where are they going? Where are they coming back to in TAFE?
Well, I think the combination of a university degree and then perhaps the practical hands-on application that you gain at TAFE really leaves an individual with the best of both worlds. So we'll see perhaps lots of commerce and accounting students come back to TAFE to learn how to do a BAS statement and do MyOB. You'll see architecture students from universities come back to TAFE and learn the most up-to-date skills with CAD. So what they're really doing is combining a lot of the university qualification with the practical hands-on experience that TAFE offers them. And TAFE have really strong relationships with employers as well. So it's a very short jump from a TAFE course into employment.
Okay. Now with that, what does that, if they've got a degree, have they finished their degree and then coming back for an advanced diploma or something like that? Or how's that transition, that migration from uni, reflecting back to what they take to an employer?
Yeah, look, often you'll find that they have completed their degree, not always, but have completed their degree. They might have gone out in the workforce for a little while and realised they need to update their skills in a particular specialist area, and TAFE's able to do that in a very succinct, practical fashion. So you see quite a lot of that. Generally they've finished their degree. A lot of people have done a degree as well and realised, you know what, I want a career change. Mm-hmm. I've done what I wanted to do in that particular area. Now what I really want to do is a trade at TAFE, or some business and computing course, or a tourism and hospitality course.
So again, they can take their prior learning from university and whatever overlapping subjects there are to TAFE, obviously.
Yeah, that's right. We're relevant, and where we're able to make that validation, there is that recognition.
Okay. In terms of success for the the geographic region for which you're responsible for. What's success look like in the next 4 to 5 years for TAFE in the Central Coast and the Hunter?
Look,
do you measure it on numbers or?
Yeah, look, certainly that is a variable, numbers, and we currently have around about 62,000 students studying with Hunter TAFE across that footprint from the Upper Hunter right down to the Central Coast. But more importantly, it's about, I think, our community service obligation, and that's a really hard thing to measure. You know, in the community that is the Central Coast, we have a vibrant business there with lots of people that work for TAFE, lots of people that go to TAFE, and we are part of the economic wheel that is going on in the Central Coast. Really hard to measure, but the contribution is significant, and because we're changing people's lives daily, you know, that contribution is absolutely significant within those communities. Similarly, in the Upper Hunter, it might be a very different geographic footprint than the Central Coast, but you know, we've got people that are in the Upper Hunter, live in the Upper Hunter, teaching to students that are part of the Upper Hunter community, businesses that are part of that Upper Hunter community. So we really measure a lot of our success through those community service obligations.
Okay. If we just focus on the Central Coast now, when we look at significant unemployment, youth unemployment there, that commitment to the community, what strategies, do you have specific strategies for the Central Coast to assist there?
Yeah, look, we certainly do. You know, it's a lot about working with internal and external stakeholders, particularly external stakeholders that are doing a lot of regional planning. They are you know, they really understand what the issues are in that particular geographic footprint.
External stakeholders?
Yeah, so Regional Development Australia, Central
Right.
Coast, we're looking at other agencies that work on the Central Coast, and a network of agencies, so that whatever product and service we do come up with, it's well supported and relevant, because it's had buy-in from all those different agencies. So if it's, for example, an initiative we're doing on the Central Coast at the moment is around single teenage mums, and supporting them in furthering their training and education so that they make a real change within their lives.
Is that RDA or is that?
That's through a collective of agencies.
Oh, right. Yeah,
the
okay.
RDA would be involved.
Because trade and investment's got something in there.
Absolutely,
as well.
trade and investment is a really strong stakeholder and an important one for Hunter TAFE on the Central Coast. And in fact, one of our campuses at Ourimbah, where we share with the University of Newcastle, there is a business incubator there where there are a number of organisations, including the local community college, that all contribute to this mix, so that from that consultation we can really be clear on what actions we need to take and play our role around training and education and developing skills and looking at skills shortage areas.
Yeah. Is there one or two specific, just for the teenage mums, that we can talk about in terms of, you know, talk and touch right now, or are they still in the planning stage?
Yeah, no, and they happen, they're cyclical. A lot of the stuff we're doing with the teenage mums is about literacy, numeracy. It might be about you know, basic interview and employability skills, because a lot of these people are really talented, but they just need a way into the workforce, and they just need to brush up on a lot of their skills as well. So our role is around customising, looking at the cohort, making sure that we also work around their variables. If they're mums, you know, they have obligations to their families, so we program our courses at times and days that suit those variables as well. I think that's also part of our evolution, is not having a stock standard product that is delivered one way and one way only across all of our geographic footprints and across all of our client segments. It's about all of that customisation and really responding to demand.
Well, we have the largest sector, or the industry sector on the coast, with the aid of hospitality, is the retail area. Is there plans to investigate more training and more effective development of those skills on the Central Coast at this stage?
Yeah, well, we work quite closely in consultation with our industry skills councils, with small business, with the business chambers on the Central Coast as well. And what we find is this one size doesn't fit all. So if you are a small business and you need something in tourism and hospitality, we'll customise that for your particular needs. And often we find ourselves going out to the workplace to do that because we can't take people away from the workplace. But similarly, we do a lot of on-the-job training now with big employers on the Central Coast like Mingara around tourism and hospitality. So yeah, if anything, it's really about customising and individualising depending on what the individual wants and or what the business wants.
I wasn't aware that you would go to a Mingara or Wyong Leagues Club or something like that and then basically run skills development workshops or skills courses in those employers' premises.
Absolutely, and it's a large part of our business, and I would say one of the key features of TAFE's evolution that it was very much classroom based. Now we find ourselves flexible, on the job, online, recognising prior learning, and fitting our education and training services and products into that of a business or an individual's lives rather than them fitting around us. So it's really changed philosophically. It's quite changed.
So if I was a Westfield or a Lend-Lease down there, could I had retailers who could benefit from a sales course or something in that area, would they come and talk to you about that, or is that something that TAFE is chasing?
Absolutely, yeah. Within the unit that I currently work in external relations, we are the daughter TAFE. We're a big organisation. There's 2,500 people work across our organisation, and often if you've not worked with TAFE before, you just don't know how or who you speak with. So within our unit, external relations, we're basically the daughter TAFE. What we'll do is we'll understand what you need, and then we'll look after all the back of house stuff for you. So we'll mobilise the right people with the right skills to work on that particular business or individual's needs, so that then we can deliver the outcome and hopefully deliver above and beyond what we set ourselves out to do in the first place.
Do you have specific targets for or service areas or educational areas for the Central Coast that you want? We've talked about obviously the teenage mums. Are there other areas like that are on your agenda, or you're keen to hear from employers who might want to get involved? Oh
look, always really keen to hear from employers, because we can mobilise ourselves and reorganise ourselves on the back of that feedback. That's what we need to do, and we concentrate a lot of our effort on. But similarly, the opportunities that the NBN presents on the Central Coast, we're working really hard on what it is from a training and education point of view we can do, how we can also add to the success of the Central Coast in that space. And also a lot of the teleworking that's going on in relation to the projects on the Central Coast around those that commute out of the Central Coast day in, day out, which I think is around about 40,000 people jump on a train or jump in a car and head out of the Central Coast. We're also working with key stakeholders around those teleworking projects and what role the Hunter TAFE can play through its Central Coast campuses through training and education. So
with the NBN, again, using the front door analogy, employers or those impacted by the NBN can either talk direct to Hunter TAFE or, I guess, go to Regional Development Australia, or should it be TAFE, the Central Coast campus they should be talking?
Well, look, RDA on the Central Coast absolutely is leading the way with a lot of these initiatives about the NBN. We're just part of a team, part of, I suppose, an integrated team. Our role is around the training and education. A lot of businesses don't understand necessarily what opportunities the NBN
I think that's the biggest thing I'm getting to. We don't know. We've celebrated the fact that we're getting NBN. The dirt gets turned at the end of this month, I think, for the first month. That was the easy bit, I think. Yes. The tough bit is making it work.
Yeah, sure. And and getting some real tangible benefits potentially for your business, and saying, okay, well look, I do want to do business this way, and the MBM will help facilitate that. Now how can I make that happen? So a lot of people may require a little bit of training around that, a little bit of education, and we have a role to play in that space.
Okay. So Samantha, the Central Coast has some specific attributes and opportunities. Can you talk about how we might vary from, say, the Upper Hunter in what's being delivered to the Central Coast and where the opportunities are, and in comparison to other areas that obviously fall within your footprint?
I'd say, Mark, that there are some key differences. The key differences would be that in the Upper Hunter, because of the mining boom, and of course there's a lot of large organisations in the Upper Hunter, the way we have to mobilise ourselves at TAFE would be different to the Central Coast, where there are maybe more small businesses, perhaps in tourism, hospitality and lifestyle. Lots of innovative businesses, however, on the Central Coast, and lots of ways of doing things differently in a work sense. So I suppose for us, it's about understanding the current environment and the future trends, working with stakeholders like Hunter Valley Research Foundation and other regional instrumentalities about uniquenesses and differences in footprints, and then customising our engagement to suit. One thing though that doesn't change across all of those footprints is a full service delivery model for TAFE. And when I say that, it's around literacy, numeracy, counselling, libraries, career developments, all those extra things that as a student or a business you want to find a one-stop shop. You mightn't at the beginning of your engagement with Hunter TAFE require it, but partway through or at the end of your engagement you might want a staff member or as an individual student to actually have an opportunity for a full range of services. So we have a full service delivery model, but it's customised depending on which geographic footprint we're in and where the business vibrancy is. So on the Central Coast, lots of tourism, hospitality and lifestyle. In the Upper Hunter, we'd have lots of mining, rail and business at the moment.
Okay. Samantha, this is, again, still on that flexibility and mobility position. You know, for a lesser person, it would be a nightmare. You know, you don't have a job at the start of each term, and then by the end of the term, you've got to change it to, or the end of the semester, you've got to change it to its next iteration. How does that get managed? Or do people look at your footprint and say, wow, you know, the mobility is number one. I don't know how she does it.
Yeah, look, I think there's key drivers and all different influences, Mark. From a state level, we are part of a wider family currently called TAFE New South Wales. There's 10 institutes in New South Wales, and there's drivers from a state level. There are drivers at a regional level, and our institute director and a senior group of managers across different faculties and different campuses come together and actualise a lot of the strategic goals from a state level, but also there's some extra stuff in there that's really just specific to Hunter TAFE. And then look, on the ground, what all the troops are doing are trying to align all of their efforts and energies against where we're going to make the most impact. And that does change. It changes from time to time. And
does it change by semester or by half year or by full year? You go into the year saying this is where we'll come out in November or December, or?
Yeah, we have lots of planning and lots of research around you know, where jobs are growing, where new jobs are being created, and a lot of that planning does happen at a state level, and then it's really consolidated and localised at a local institute level. So we have some really good planning instruments for the year, but overlaid across that is this flexibility to go, you know what, the best laid plans are often undone, so we do need to recast and rechange a lot of the planning that we did. So there's lots of, you know, pulling a lever over here and then pulling a little lever over here, and it's done at a state level and at a local level. But largely what goes on at Hunter TAFE is very much the direction of the Institute Director and his team, and understanding, a really good understanding about what's required from Hunter TAFE. What role do we play in terms of this economic wheel that is the Hunter and the Central Coast? And it isn't easy. We don't always get it right. But you know what we can do is put the customer at the centre of our business, and then keep on reevaluating and mobilising ourselves differently on the back of that feedback. You know, that's something that we encourage so much from our individual customers, our business customers, community customers, government customers, is that feedback, so that we can hear them, listen, and then where we can reorganise ourselves to go back out to the marketplace with something that is really demand driven. So we're doing that all the time.
If we were to give you an opportunity to have a rant on the business environment on the Central Coast and the way we relate to TAFE or the campus down there, what would you like to see different in the business environment on the Central Coast, do you think?
Look, I think the Central Coast is an absolutely magnificent area. Not only is it naturally beautiful, but there are so many opportunities. With those opportunities, there are lots of challenges at the minute, particularly in relation to unemployment, which is really different in that geographic footprint than it is in another geographic footprint that Hunter TAFE might cover. We need to understand exactly what it is we need to do better to mobilise ourselves into the future, and we're doing our best in terms of engagement and in terms of making sure that we're listening and we're hearing the views of the business community as well as individuals within the community, so that we can reorganise ourselves. And I think we have to keep on doing that, because what we're offering now mightn't be what we need to offer as a business in 6 months' time. The Central Coast is a real priority for us. Even at the highest levels within Hunter TAFE, our Institute Director and our Associate Director, you know, they just love the Central Coast. Every time that they, you know, our Associate Director is from the Central Coast. So we have a role to play, we have a community service obligation, but if we have to reorganise ourselves and we've got to do things a little bit differently for the Central Coast community, then we need to hear about it and we'll be able to action it.
That would be the wrap-up point. I think you need to hear about it. We on the Central Coast need to be telling you about it, whether in business or community or whatever.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.